What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here with JaboctheGreat once again. We are back with another episode of the Last Word podcast, and we're back with our NCAA tournament coverage for both the men and the women's March Madness tournaments this year. We already covered the first two rounds, a lot of foolishness, mainly on the men's side for sure. And some of that foolishness continued in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8, which we'll cover right now, starting with the men's. So probably the most notable victory would be NC State, number 11 over number 2 Marquette. So NC State's already been on a pretty crazy run, being an 11 seed, getting this far. Now they're in the Final Four, of course. We'll get to that in just a second here. But NC State got a good victory, 67-58 over Marquette, number 2 seed. I want to say that's either the highest differential in seeding so far this year that in an upset, or it might be a tie. I'm not sure exactly, but one or the other. So still pretty impressive. We also had some other upsets too. Some that not as impressive, but Clemson and Arizona, that was probably the next biggest one. 6 seed Clemson continuing their run up until the Elite 8 at least, beating Arizona. Then you had Duke, number 4 over Houston, and then Alabama, number 4 over UNC. Both of those teams that fell were 1 seeds, of course. And then Illinois, just a slight upset over Iowa State, 72-69. But, of course, NC State in this run that they're having, probably the biggest thing, marquee win over Marquette.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest one for these first 2 rounds for sure. I mean, there's another one that comes up in the Elite 8 also with NC State, but a big win over Marquette, and not like a like 72-69 like Illinois and Iowa State. 67-58, a pretty decent little margin that they opened up to try to get themselves into a pretty big zone of victory there. NC State, DJ Burns has just been bullying guys. It's a little tough to guard him. I don't really know what you're supposed to do against a guy of his size, and his footwork is good. He's just a really good post player. Put that on display again in the Elite 8 when NC State would go on to beat North Carolina rival Duke. Right, so Duke is part of that big North Carolina triangle that hasn't really felt entirely like a triangle for a while. Got it this year for a little bit. There was a chance that 2 of the 3 of them could make it to the Final Four. Obviously, 2 of them had to go through each other. But UNC fell short to Alabama in a game where RJ Davis just went like 0 for 9 from 3, and Alabama took advantage and claimed a narrow victory there. And then Duke gets the win over Houston. And they come in, and Jared McCain puts up 32 against NC State, but Kyle Filipowski puts in 11, which I guess, is not the worst. However, he just wasn't defending DJ Burns. There's sometimes where I like to say he was getting bullied by him. There's other times where, he would just kind of like turn around. And just be like, oh, yep, that's DJ. And DJ would shoot the ball, and it scores. I don't know what you're supposed to do on that one. So I think NC State's run is definitely the biggest one so far. They are, of course, the lowest seed by far in the Final Four. So not the typical low seed that you would think of for like a Cinderella run. I know you usually look at 14s and lower. But NC State put Oakland from a 14 to rest in that matchup. And then they moved on to stay the lowest seed alive. As Clemson just couldn't get it over Alabama, they would also they would not be lower than NC State had they moved through. But they could not defend the 3-point shots from Alabama, and Clemson, we couldn't hit our free throws to save a life. I think if you asked them to shoot the ball into the ocean for a free throw, we would have missed. It was just it was a rough night. We've been pretty good from the free throw line, but sometimes you get a bad night at a bad time. That's what happened for Clemson against Alabama. Alabama got the threes they needed. Clemson shot really poorly from the free throw line and could not really answer from the 3-point line either, and that caused them to have a narrow loss in that one. Otherwise, for these these next 2 rounds, for the men's tournament, there hasn't been anything insanely crazy except, Purdue kind of manhandled Gonzaga after being a little close to them, and then did the same with Tennessee, not as badly as they did to Gonzaga, but turned a close game into a big Purdue win, not in the most entertaining fashion, but who am I to judge? I would say that if I had to watch one of these teams, I wouldn't be Purdue by choice. They just don't play that fun of a style of basketball, but they do play good basketball. They get themselves to the line. They score well. They defend decently well. So they did what they had to do to get themselves into the Final Four. But UConn Struggled just a little bit with Illinois at first, and it doesn't stay that way. So they kind of rolled over San Diego State as a championship rematch, put that to bed, moved along. Got to Illinois. Illinois is tied with them going into halftime, and then UConn goes on or close to halftime. UConn then goes on a 30-0 run. So while UConn scored 30 points in a basketball game, Illinois did nothing. They ran around and did cardio, I guess.
Yeah.
Watching it didn't feel real. 30-0 is just a crazy thing. It doesn't matter if you're in that game, if you're watching that game, if you're in person on TV. That's just a crazy thing to happen. And so NC State has had definitely the most, I think, triumphant move through this tournament. But UConn, I wouldn't say quietly because I've seen a lot about UConn and how good they are. But UConn steamrolls San Diego State and then hits that 30-0 run on Illinois and kind of had, I remember going out to watch the Clemson-Alabama game right after the UConn game, and the people I'm watching with, we were all kind of like, if we beat Alabama, what are we going to do? Like, what are you supposed to do against a UConn team that can take a tie game and turn it into you're down 30? Like, I mean, what is that? How do you handle that? And so with Clemson as well, as a Clemson student, I would say that I enjoyed our run, but we got maybe deeper than we should have. We didn't get deep to the point where it's like, now I'm mad that we lost. Right? We're supposed to lose to New Mexico according to all the analysts. We shouldn't have beat Baylor. We shouldn't have beat Arizona. Alabama was still a higher seed than us, but I think that was the team we had the best chance on paper of beating. And we just didn't play the way we played in the previous few games. Score more, actually, than all those other rounds, but allow more points by far. And it just kind of fell apart from there. So, a little bit to be bitter about to lose in that fashion. But otherwise, these Sweet 16 and Elite 8 did not disappoint for the men's tournament. NC State, impressive run. UConn rolling. Alabama, a fun run with the type of team that they have. So in for a pretty good Final Four.
Yeah, I kind of just want to talk a little bit more about, two of these teams at least that made it in to the Final Four. Of course, Purdue, a team that you're a big fan of course, that you eloquently put just now, and the NC State Wolfpack. And I'm glad these two teams are playing each other. I will be rooting for NC State for sure in this one. And it's no hate to Purdue or anything. I will say this, like, Zach Edey, absolutely great. But Jesus Christ, like, I mean, the amount of fouls that he drew was like almost borderline illegal. It is hard to guard him, right? And you do have to be a lot more physical with him just because of how big he is. And, everybody always talks about the bag, this and the bag that. Do you have a bag? LeBron got in on it a couple of days ago on the podcast with JJ. And, maybe he doesn't really have the bag like that. People don't think he's really skilled, but he is a big dude. You have to be able to get hands on to defend him. And it seems like every single time they breathe on this man, they called the foul. I mean, Zach Edey in this game shot 22 free throws. The Tennessee Volunteers shot 11. Let me repeat that. Zach Edey shot 22 free throws. Tennessee shot 11.
Yeah.
And I'll give him, he's the big dude tax, and he's getting contact in the paint and everything right under the basket. I'll give him that. So, I'll give you 10 free throws right there. You take away 10 free throws, he still had more free throws than the Tennessee Volunteers. That was a little ridiculous. And to me, as somebody that didn't really have like a preference either way in this game, how people can sit there and say, oh, he's getting fouled and they're not doing anything. And it's like, dude, he went to the free throw line like 10, 11 times. Like, what do you mean? You expect every time he goes to basket to be a foul? I mean, it darn near was. I think those were just Purdue fans, respectfully. And he doesn't need to go to the free throw line every 5 seconds to be good. Like, he still had an amazing game outside of the free throws. Like, he scored 40. So, I mean, 40 points, 16 rebounds. You take away the free throws that he made, he still put up like 26 points, outside of that. So it's not like he had to go to the free throw line to be dominant. So, yeah, I just had a little vent there because that was a little ridiculous watching it, to be honest. And you can say Tennessee might have gotten away with some more. But even the one time that they called the foul on him once, and Purdue fans got pissed. And it's like, what? Look, I get being a a homer, but like, my God, how do you watch that? And I don't know. Like, I just don't get how you can watch that and boo. He gets called for one foul after he gets like 100 free throw shots. I mean, that's hilarious. And again, he didn't need those free throws to be great. So it just kind of, it bothered me. But overall, Tennessee, they had this game and a lot of different points there. Main thing for them, they just, outside of Connect, like, they didn't really get much from anybody. Like Ziegler, like, there's some points where he had, he led the team in assists, had darn near half the team's assists and everything. I mean, he was good in that sense. And some key plays here and there, but outside of Connect, I mean, like Tennessee, they weren't really helping him out. So obviously that Zach Edey dominating that one with the caveat of the free throws, that led to Purdue getting into the Final Four against NC State, who, quite frankly, in the first half, like Duke is 4 seed, not as high as Marquette, but it's still Duke. You've always going to have great players at Duke. They didn't really play that well in the first half against Duke, and it's like, man, you can't come out against a team like this and expect to win. But second half, if you look at it, it went from being down 27-21 to outscoring Duke by almost 20 in the second half. You said it, DJ Burns, he's probably my favorite player of all time now. That's a joke, but he's great. I mean, they really couldn't do much with him. He put up 30 points. I mean, it was amazing to watch him out there. So, it's for Duke, you mentioned Filikowski, obviously not having the best game. Both sides. To be honest, like, what can you really do with DJ Burns? I mean, if NC State loses in the Final Four in the championship, I'm not going to act like they got exposed, like they're not supposed to be there in the first place. But for me, it was just the fact that you could not really guard this man, and he just really got whatever he wanted. And that was definitely fun to watch, a lot more fun to watch than big man going to the line every 5 seconds. But either way, I give credit to both those guys. You're definitely excited to see Purdue and NC State on Saturday.
Yeah, I think NC State really matches up well with Purdue because one of the things that you really eloquently pointed out here is that Tennessee left Dalton Connect out to dry. Like that was all that was going on was Dalton Connect. Nobody else was doing anything. NC State has a really, really, really strong two-man game offensively with DJ Horn and DJ Burns. Both of them complementing each other's style of play. This is just because I'm a Bucks fan, but you can think of it as a Giannis and Dame type of connection. And so I think you've got a really beautiful thing there that can be a problem for Purdue if they can do that. I also think that obviously Zach Edey is 7'4", he's going to have a height advantage on almost anyone he matches up with. I do think that Burns' size is still going to be an issue for Zach Edey. And then to go along with that, I mean, offensively he struggled against Duke, but Mohamed Diarra playing during Ramadan has been a defensive menace for NC State, and I think that can come up pretty big too. So I'm excited to see NC State go on and play Purdue. I probably made it clear when I said that I don't like to watch Purdue that I'm rooting for NC State in this one. So also happy to see the ACC kind of keep rolling through. So it would be nice to have one of the ACC teams, the only one remaining, make it into the championship. Though I do fear, despite the fact that it would make my bracket correct, that UConn is on an unstoppable tear. They have rolled over anybody who's gotten in their path. Not even just in the tournament. The last 8 games, they're even going back out of the tournament. They have won by double digits, so 91-52, 75-58, 82-52, 77-52. They're holding their opponents into the 50s. They're hitting 70s, 80s, 90s every game. They're going to play Alabama now. Alabama, very impressive run, taking out a pretty scrappy Charleston Southern. Then they take out Grand Canyon. That's maybe a layup because Grand Canyon upsets St. Mary's. Alabama is a little bit better of a team there. Then they get over North Carolina and really show that they're good. They get over a pretty scrappy Clemson team. I like the way Alabama plays. They shoot threes nicely. They did just eliminate Clemson, so I am hoping that they lose this game. But I'm not entirely sure that they have the best shot as a team to get over this UConn team. And it's just kind of tough, right? Because even when Illinois made it interesting and was tied with UConn, or when San Diego State was up on UConn, don't last. Both of them lost by 30 or 20ish. I think that UConn was a big problem for Alabama. I think that we're going to have UConn going into the championship. I think that NC State actually has a decent chance to upset Purdue here. So I'm kind of hoping that we get a UConn NC State game. Then I'm a little worried. I'm not entirely sure that that NC State can get over UConn either, but that's for a different video to unpack. We'll see who makes it to the championship. But right now, I do think that UConn, similar to South Carolina when we talk about the women's here shortly, UConn has just looked insanely dominant and a really hard team to even find a sliver of light against. I mean, you tie with them, you think that's good because you're not down by 20, then boom, 30-0 run. You have a lead on them, you just lost to them in the championship last year, probably feeling good morally, boom, you lost by 30. It's a pretty tough team. They kind of quietly end up storming over other teams. It's just a tough one. They're a really well composed team. They're well coached. I'm not the biggest fan of Dan Hurley, but they are pretty well coached. Klingon is a really solid player, and you got a lot of good contribution from the rest of the starters and from bench players. Just a super well composed team that I think presents some pretty tough issues for everyone in it. I usually, one seeds in a tournament can be a little scary, right? Because it's that's got to happen at some point. But UConn and pretty quietly this time, they both kind of made their way up to the Final Four in a pretty dominant fashion. I would like to see both upset by NC State.